The good old clap, take one.
That's right.
How many of you knew what you wanted to be when you were 7 years old? I did. I wanted to be world champion.
Hey, is there honesty involved in this podcast? Can we be honest?
You can shut your fucking lips.
And then I'll just say, put them up, what? Let's go.
He's like, you look too pretty on the wave. Get ugly.
We can talk about DMT if you want.
I thought we were boxing.
All right. We have San Clemente, favorite son, 10-year championship tour veteran.
Yeah, wow, decade.
Olympian 2022 championship tour wildcard applicant. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
And now auteur of the recently premiered, by the time this airs, Reckless Isolation. Reckless Isolation.
For some reason, did you talk to Matt?
I talked to Matt.
Because he calls it reckless abandonment for some reason.
I definitely didn't screw up when I talked to him. I told him it should be called Isolated at Sea.
Yeah, I like that one too.
Yeah, that's good. Reckless Isolation's good. And the sweatshirts look good. You guys are running the Nike 6.0 color scheme. It's great.
Yeah, well, they originally signed me up.
Yeah, I'm
still on the contract, the Nike 6.0 contract.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Just transferred a few times?
10 years, yeah.
Look at that.
When I was 17 to 27, so still repping.
I love it. Well, we are here in your garage in San Clemente today. How are you doing today? Have you surfed? Are you going to surf? What's the deal?
I surfed Oceanside, and then we did a San Diego little core 8 surf shops. We hung up posters and gave away hats and hoodies to the employees of the movie, try to hype it up, get everyone psyched, and then I'll probably surf again this afternoon.
I love it. I've been following you guys. You've got the Colapinto brothers. You got Luke Davis. You got Ian Crane. You guys have been doing the Lord's work and going to core independent surf shops, properly promoting the film.
Yeah.
And Reckless Isolation, it's kind of the spiritual sequel to Lost at Sea, the seminal Mentawais boat trip film from the 90s featuring Corey and Shay, the Beshan brothers, Wardo, and the late, great Andy Irons. Yep. Was that film in the back of your mind when you guys were making this one?
For sure. I think, some of the handycam footage, there's a lot of similarities of the handycam footage, and you could hear the audio in the background, a lot of that stuff. I think, obviously our movie, it feels like a little bit higher of a production, not as not as core, but not as doesn't take you there as much, but we definitely tried to sprinkle that in. I think we did a pretty good job. But that's definitely one of our favorite movies for sure. That it was that, and we tried to have some of the Volcom touches in there too, some of their stuff with the 16 mil and that sort of thing. So yeah, those 2 movies were definitely our 2 inspirations making it. And it's weird when you're on the trip, you're watching Lost at Sea on the boat, oh, so psyched, look at Lances, how good it is. But we actually got waves way better than they did. So I don't know, it was cool for sure to be on the trip and then also make the movie.
So by the time this podcast airs, you would have done 2 premieres.
Yeah.
Make the pitch. You've got a number of tour dates coming up. Why should people come out and see the film?
Well, I think there's definitely a spot in the industry for surf movies. I think in the past they have companies hire marketing people, and they market the surfing and market the surfers and kind of put them up on this pedestal, almost heroic style. And now it seems like the companies have given that job to the surfers, which I don't know if it's good or bad. It seems kind of weird to me.
Right.
And yeah, I guess the goal for me making the film and doing all the stuff for the film, funding it and everything, was to kind of put them on a pedestal and make them kind of heroic. So I don't know. I think, it's a great display of surfing, and there's great music, and yeah, it's a fun time.
It's a good point you bring up too. When we're talking about Lost at Sea, those guys weren't worried about how the film came together or how it was marketed or anything. They just went out there and ripped. Whereas, as you pointed out, today, as a professional surfer, as a professional athlete, you have to be concerned with so much more.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think that trip was originally a surfer mag trip, I want to say.
Right.
Where they just had leftover footage and they made a film out of it. Yeah, and it just happened to be one of the best films ever.
Back when the mags used to be like, yeah, sure, like we're first class ticket and first class all the way for like 10 people to go to the Mentawais for a month, you know?
Yeah.
The good old days.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, mags don't even exist anymore, so it's kind of funny to talk about.
You are the mag, man. So I'm curious, where does this film for you, starring both in front of the camera and as you pointed out behind, you put this thing together.
Yeah.
Where does it sit in your own career arc? Is this sort of the beginning of a new chapter for you creatively? Is this a touch point en route to your physical resurrection and ascent to the WSL Final Five? Like, where does this sit for you?
For me, it was just really cool to like be a part of something and to really make the film and make this like big, huge thing that really wasn't about me. Like, I don't know if going into the film you thought it was going to be like a Kolohe project or whatever, but it was very like equal parts of basically whoever got the best clips was the star of the sections in the movie. So it was cool just to like prop my friends up really, and then also creatively learn how everything goes. And then also I just love surfing. So to be surrounded by surfing as a whole, whether it's making films or learning how to shape or competitively free surfing, trips without cameras. I just want to do it all. So it was just fun to really just watch hours and hours of footage.
Who is the standout to you in the film?
I think Ian, because it's a lot of tube riding, and then Ian does the best airs of the movie, and no one's ever seen him, so I think that'll be a big shock for everyone. I think the best clip of the whole movie is probably Crosby. Crosby has probably the best clip, which is rad for him being 19 at the time and kind of just like the grom of the trip that got to tag along with his brother, and then holding his own with us. And I'm almost like 10 years older than him. So yeah, it's pretty cool. And then I don't know, it's kind of like in the past you have these generations and everyone has their own like little like spot in the group. Like Luke has like probably the best ridden wave of the trip at Greenbush. So I don't know, it's cool. Like everyone ripped, and yeah, the level when editing the film, like the level was so high, like we left so many good clips out that it feels like every clip's like insane. So it's really rad.
It's worth it. So good luck with the premieres and the tour. I'm excited to see how people respond to it.
Yeah.
And Reckless Isolation is premiering really days ahead of the window for the world title deciding Rip Curl WSL Finals, which is this year in your backyard at Lower Trestles. Mm-hmm. So I want to get your thoughts on the record. Who is going to be the men's and women's world champion when the dust settles at the finals?
Well, women's, I mean, this isn't like definitely not set in stone. This is just my opinion. And I'm going to be glued to the TV watching every single heat. I mean, I'm really excited to watch. The bitterness of not being in the events settled a lot earlier than I thought. Around Margaret's, I was just glued to it, watching everything all the way through. So it's been fun to be a fan. And
wait, are you saying that you couldn't watch before Margaret's after you?
No, I couldn't watch. Yeah. What was it? Newcastle and Narrabeen, I couldn't watch. I was too like sad that I wasn't involved. But after that, I was just psyched.
Now, real quick, was it like you watched from the first heat of Margaret's, or like halfway through you're like, okay, I'm going to turn this on?
I think it was like the first heat, because or not the first heat, but like the first round or whatever, because it was like bombing.
Yeah.
And I was watching John and he got that 10 or whatever. I was like, what? This is sick. And I was just like, when the waves are good, it's just so fun to watch.
It's easy to put on.
Yeah. And then I got stuck in the like, who's going to make the top? And I just watched every single heat, and I watched the surf ranch.
You're going back online being like, what the fuck happened to Newcastle?
I did actually, because they were showing like highlights of Gabriel just going ballistic and Narrabeen. I was like, what? I got to watch that. So yeah, full fanboy. But I think Riss, she's like the best in and out of the water, like the queen of surfing. And she's been such a good role model for young women, but also men too. She's just the shit. So she's my pick for the women. And then the men, I don't know. I think it's weird because Gabriel's had such a good year, and I really think he deserves to be world champ. And if it was a normal year, he would have won 3 events ago or whatever it was, So but I think sometimes Philippe just has those events where he gets like, dog eye, or his eyes roll back in his head and he just goes out of body, and Lowers is a great place for him. So I don't know, he'll only have to surf, I think it was like 4 or 5 heats, and that's super doable for him. So I would say he'd be really hard to beat for sure.
It's been funny because everyone's kind of either in town or migrating to town, and like it's become like a sort of a sensation. I've got people texting me being like, Gabriel was at my gym tonight. He looks like a monster. Like he's for sure going to win. I'm like, wow, paparazzi's like out in force right now. Everyone wants to know what people's headspaces are ahead of it. Yeah,
it's cool. There's a lot of hype behind it. And obviously San Clemente is like a huge surf town. It's based on surfing and going to the beach. So yeah, people are psyched, and it's going to be a great show.
I had breakfast with Tyler Wright this morning, and we were talking about this. We were kind of looking back in history, and the idea of a title contender is kind of nebulous when you look back over the rankings. Like you and I would probably be like, yeah, that year it was this person, that year it was that person. But as you pointed out, some years it's like even the world runner-up was so far back from first that it's kind of it's a little bit hard thinking about like, oh, that person was a title contender. But now, with the advent of the WSL Final 5, there's not really a gray area. It's almost like someone brought it up to me today, and they're like, it's like an Oscar nomination, even if you don't win, people are like, Oscar nominated, Kolohe Andino is now starring in this film kind of thing. And I think it's kind of cool. And you yourself would have qualified twice for the WSL Final 5 in your career. In 2016, you finished 4th. And in 2019, you finished 5th.
Yeah.
How do you think you would have fared both of those years in your career against the top 5?
I don't know.
Depends on who the top 5 would.
Depends where it was too.
Right. Yeah.
Just being honest.
But how about just in terms of your surfing, like 2016 to 2019? Did you feel like you were like in title contention at those points?
In 2016, I didn't actually. I was just really stoked to be like getting a lot of good results, and then I ended the year with 3 thirds, and I was like, oh, I'm 4th in the world, and I was actually 1 heat from runner up. It was crazy.
Yeah.
And John had like a really good year that year, and he won his first world title. And then 2019, I definitely would have had a lot better shot. I went into the year thinking I was a title contender, and that was my goal from the first flight to snapper. So going into that, it would have been rad, but that being said, I would have had the same seed because of 4th and 5th. But yeah, the seed thing definitely matters because you have to surf less heats, and like being on tour, you never, it's very rare that you have someone surf 4 heats in a day.
Yeah.
And it's pretty rare that you surf 3 the way they do it. So surfing 5 or 6 all for the title would be really, really hard. And I keep trying to tell my dad that, but he's not listening.
Well, it's interesting too, because you brought up Carissa and Gabe, and it's like the number 1 seed physically certainly has a huge advantage, being like, cool, I'm fresh, I've got 2 shots at least to take this on. But psychologically, for certain surfers, it might be a challenge, right? Because you're not getting any momentum. You're having to watch someone kind of cleave their way through the draw, and you might be like, oh, that guy's or girl's kind of figured it out. Like, what's happening now? So I think it's gonna be really interesting.
Yeah, well, that's what I was saying originally about Steph, because I think she's in the first heat.
I think she's 4th, so she has to start from the first match.
And it's like, because I think if she finished 2nd in the world, like she would be like give Chris a real run, because she'd have to surf a lot less heats. But she'll have to surf whatever, I think it's like, is it 5 or 6 heats or something?
She'll surf against the 5th seed if she wins.
Yeah.
The 3rd seed, 2nd seed to get to the number 1 seed. So that's 3 already, and then she's got to do at least 5 to win the title, maybe 6.
That's so many heats. That's crazy. And anywhere in the world, that's a lot of heats, even if it's like at T Street and you're paddling 10 feet from the shore. Like it's a lot. It's just a lot mentally. So yeah, I was saying that to my dad, because my dad's like, thinks Steph has a good shot at it, out of all the 4 other women.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, you just don't understand. Like 6 heats is crazy. And he's like, Chris has got to watch out for Steph.
Yeah. I think so too, actually. And Steph's an interesting one too, because people love to be hyperbolic on storylines, and like with Steph, they're like, oh yeah, her time's passed. And I'm like, she's still like a world title contender. Like she smashed everyone in Mexico. Like she could do it, but I think you're getting to the right point, especially the finals format of it is physically and it's like even mentally taxing having to surf that many heats to get to the final.
Yeah. It's more mental. I mean, in Mexico, I can imagine surfing 2 heats, you know,
Right,
so
yeah.
hot. Yeah, it's just hard, you know, mentally, physically, whatever.
Well, let's switch gears to the 2020-2021 season, because you, my man, are not currently qualified for the 2022 WSL Championship Tour.
Yeah.
Placed equal 17th at the Billabong Pipe Masters, then had to withdraw from the Australian leg after doing the quarantine, which would have been hard.
But I made a baby, so it was good.
That's good. So you definitely beat everyone else in the quarantine.
Yeah.
Then had to pull out of 5 events, but then came back and finished 9th in Mexico after your really impressive Olympic showing. But ultimately finished 37th on the rankings, which is outside the bubble.
Yeah.
The WSL have 2 wild cards annually for the men's championship tour. So I'm gonna let you make your case on the podcast for what would you be putting, or what did you put in your application for 2022?
I don't even know. Actually, my wife wrote it.
If she wrote it, I feel pretty good about it. Your wife's really smart.
Yeah, she graduated college. I didn't even graduate middle school. Yeah, I don't know. It was, for me, it was just kind of like, you know, nothing I could do. I couldn't walk and got surgery 2 months into the injury, which was kind of a bummer. I feel like even if I would have known that I needed surgery, though, from day dot of the injury, I still would have missed all of Australia. So not much I could do, really, you know. And then kind of just looking forward, as far as like, if I don't get the wild card, that's what I was like, you know, planning for, all the things you can't control, like everyone says. But I was like, yeah, okay, well, I could do the QS, and let's do it. So yeah.
Totally. And even like this year has obviously been a very chaotic year too. I mean, there are a number of people that in Mexico woke up to the news that Tahiti was canceled.
That was crazy.
Like, everyone kind of knew that was a possibility, and then when it became a reality, people were like, "What? Now I don't have another shot at requalifying." You know?
Yeah, or a shot at the top 5 or
Totally.
top 10, or
Of course.
I'm retiring, and I thought my last waves were going to be at Tahiti, and now it was yesterday.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Yeah, like Adriano or whatever. So
of course, yeah.
that was
yeah.
cool. You got to ride a couple more waves.
It was
or
really
whatever.
cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting too, because, you know, you're talking about Adriano and you know, Jeremy and Julian and a number of people who had been on tour for at least over a decade, and some more, and all of them very accomplished. It does feel like the challenges of the last couple of years with quarantines and the pandemic and just the logistics of having to travel, especially for people that end up having families, it kind of expedited a decision they were probably going to make in the next 3 to 5 years anyway. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think, you know, they have the decision to do whatever they want. I've personally myself just had to watch all those events, so I was like, you know, really excited to do anything that's popping up. Like if I didn't have the movie tour, I would have been at Outer Banks trying to compete there. I just love competing. I love the atmosphere of like hanging with all your friends and cheering each other on. Like all that stuff's just so fun for me, and I think I have enough perspective right now to realize that it's probably the best time of my whole life. So I want to get after it, especially after not doing the whole tour for 2020 and then being injured. I'm just like, man, I just want to get the jersey on. And as soon as I did at the Olympics and in Mexico, like I just felt right back at home. I was like, it felt so good. So yeah, for me, I just kind of tip my cap, really, you know, not to blow sunshine up, you know, the WSL's butt, but I'm just like, can't believe that they plucked out, what was it, 7, 8 events or something? And
ended up with 7, yeah.
Yeah, and finish with a sick world title event that's going to happen. And also Mexico. Like, Mexico was the sickest event ever. And I was like, you know, you guys nailed it, really. So
yeah, we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. But I'm curious too, in terms of your own career arc and physicality. I know you're a big sports fan, you know, football and everything else, baseball. Do you think that the injury and the rehabilitation process has made you stronger in a lot of ways? Because a lot of athletes come back from those processes learning more about their body, strengthening parts that maybe were weaker ahead of time. Like from a physicality standpoint, when you put the jersey back on, did you feel stronger than before?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, a lot of the rehab for my ankle and the whole thing was like strength training. So I was actually, like you're saying, like the strongest I've ever been in my life. So yeah, I felt great. And then also I've had back issues in the past, and my back felt great. Like everything just felt good and was rolling good. So yeah, I don't know. I think, you know, definitely try to take that momentum into next year or the QS or wherever you guys put me.
We'll know in a couple weeks. You'll know when you're on tour for Reckless Isolation. It'd be a big night.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, especially for someone like you, because you're almost someone, we'll return blowing sunshine up your ass. Like someone who's had all the technical skills since probably before you can remember in terms of surfing.
Oh, yeah.
And it boils down to what we pointed out, like physicality, mental strength, and so being able to feel stronger than you ever have is probably so good for just the confidence moving into the season, because it's never been I need to work on that. Well, it probably has been, but just broadly, it doesn't seem to me, as a professional observer of professional surfing, you're not someone who's like, I need to work on this part of my surfing or that part of my surfing, because you have all that internal knowledge. It's more just putting it together on the wave.
Oh, well, that's nice of you to say. I think my biggest challenge was probably mental, maybe. So yeah, we're kind of saying this similar thing,
right?
A little bit, where I feel like I had all the skills, but it's almost as easy as sometimes I don't have the right mood on the wave,
Yeah.
But yeah, being stronger and, learning how to, for me, surf right points, better with better flow and, getting better at aerials, all that sort of stuff is definitely like the top three things I wanted to work on in the off season, even moving forward, because now we have a big break and all that sort of thing. So yeah, I'm always trying to get better, and it's fun. It's fun getting better. And when you have those little breakthroughs and that sort of thing, it's like, it's epic. And I'm young enough to keep improving every day. So it's fun. And I think, for me, like, it's just, the Brazilians are just kicking everyone's ass. So it's just really inspiring to, like, okay, what are they doing? What do I got to improve on? Like that sort of thing. 'Cause at some point you just get a little sick of it. I tip my cap to them, but it's like, man, they're just winning everything. It's crazy.
They got a stranglehold.
We got to figure something out. Come on, come on, John. Come on, Griffin.
Come on, brother. Yeah. Well, we're gonna maybe dig into a little bit of that. We're gonna do a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we'll wind the clock back and unpack the foundational building blocks of Kolohe Andino. We'll be right back. Maybe more so than anyone in existence, you are a product of the surfing industrial complex. And I mean that in the best possible way. You grew up inside the industry, sponsored from a young age, have been around it for a long, long time. Do you agree with that, number one? And if so, was there a moment where you became self-aware of like, oh yeah, I have a unique situation here?
Yeah, no, I agree with that for sure. I mean, my dad, pro surfer, and then worked in the industry and got to know, all my favorite surfers at a young age, and went to, tour stops when I was young, and it was like normal life for me. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I don't know how that really would affect me in any way, but I've never really thought about that.
I don't know so much about it affecting you, but more so, was there a moment, because it would have been normal from the time you were born, was there a moment where you were like, oh, wow, like this is not normal for everybody. Like this is pretty unique compared to a lot of other people I've maybe been exposed to.
Yeah, well, I don't know. For me, since I've been competing, I got to a point where it was like everything was really easy. I qualified easy, and then it got really hard. And then I got my ass kicked, and I kept just losing and losing and losing. And then I became really worried. And I was like, I feel like I had some like, maybe 7 or 8 years of like basing everything on worry, right. And it was kind of weird, because I feel like I just realized that I was worrying a lot. And then I was thinking about it, and I was like, what am I worrying about? Like, I've already won life, really, maybe I haven't won a world title or an event, or I was, one heat here or there. Like, you just start worrying about so much.
Right.
And then I think I was basing a lot of my training and my preparation off of worrying.
You're defensive almost.
Yeah, instead of like rejoicing and loving it and excited about it and excited about winning and performing and all that sort of stuff. More worried. So yeah, and that all this kind of happened, at the end of 2019, because I've said this a lot, but I had 3 goals in the beginning. I was like, hey, I wanted to be in the title race all the way to the last day. Mm-hmm. I wanted to win an event, and I wanted to make the Olympics. Mm. And because I was like, if you're in the title race at Pipe, it feels like that's kind of like as good as you can almost ask for. And then Pipeline decides who wins that day.
Mm-hmm.
And I did 2 out of my 3 goals. And I was like, man, that's pretty rad. Like, that's huge. And I was like, one decision from doing 3 out of 3 goals at Staramba.
Right.
Yeah. So I was like, man, I'm really blessed and I've won life. Like, there's nothing to worry about. I need to just tweak a little bit what's motivating me and also, my mood.
Well, let's unpack that a little bit, because when you were younger, did you ever wrestle with anything like that? Because I'd imagine, and I wasn't that close to your amateur career, but it seemed like you won a lot.
Yeah.
And did you feel like it wasn't hard? I'm not trying to sort of undermine the talent of your competitors at the time, but
yeah,
I don't feel like you were challenged as much then as you were when you qualified. Is that fair?
Oh, no. Yeah, that's super fair. I mean, I kind of accidentally qualified.
Right.
Yeah, and that's a really high level. Like, that's the primes. That's like, I'm getting 5ths and 3rds in the primes without even really preparing myself. Like, I was just a 17-year-old Grom who just loved surfing.
Yeah.
And then I think I won 3 6-stars a year I qualified. So I was just like,
Oh,
this is rad.
Yeah.
But then I got to the tour and I was 17 and Joel had a family and I was going against Kelly and Mick and Taj, and it was like
at their prime.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
I think Joel's
sort of
28, so he's only a year older than me. Where physical and mental is like peaking for those guys.
Sure.
And they're alpha dogs and they, it's gnarly. And I was just like, whoa, like I got a heat with B Durbridge, like what? Like I had 20 heats with B, so that was easy.
And that dude's unflappable. It's just like whatever. I'm going hard.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was crazy. And then I got misskewed or led down the wrong path because it was so easy for Gabriel and John, and I qualified 6 months after him because they got on in the half year.
Right.
And it was so easy for them, and I was like, why isn't it what? Like, what am I missing?
Right.
Yeah. So it was a strange thing. And then even Nat getting on the year after me and he finished 8th his first year, I was just like, I just couldn't understand it. So yeah, but mentioning Nat, I learned a lot from him, just like the work ethic, all that stuff. And
yeah,
it was cool to hang out with him and watch him succeed so much because I learned so much from him.
It's interesting because we actually talked about this quite a bit on the podcast and comparing, your situations almost with John's when you guys qualified because it was so close. And yeah. I remember following it really, really closely at the time. And as odd as this is to say, John being a CT surfer was actually a little bit under the radar when he qualified because everyone knew that he could do some airs and everyone knew that he was obviously really good in the barrel. But yeah. I remember there was like a collective concern of I don't know if he's going to make it on tour, because we weren't sure if he was the whole package. And because I think that same year he qualified, he'd broken his back and he'd kind of, as odd as it is to say, it was under the radar.
Yeah, well, it's funny because, he's one of the most successful surfers ever. And
sure.
I'm friends with him, so I could say this, but he didn't actually qualify. Yaden Nickel qualified, and then Yaden blew his ankle out in Japan. So it was this weird thing.
That's right. He slipped in.
Yeah, and then I think his first year on tour, the first half year or whatever, he didn't have many results. He maybe had 1/9 in, I'm being a nerd right now, but 1/9 in Portugal.
You're acting like I think he did, but
Yeah. Yeah, and then he won Sunset, which wasn't a CT event. But
we were still doing the one world ranking.
It was huge, yeah. And then I think he got 5th at Pipe or some lost to Kelly. But then it was still I remember I was like, oh, he's, whatever. We'll see how he does in the point breaks, all that sort of stuff. Yeah. And then he blitzed the tour that next year. I think he finished 4th.
The next year, I think his first CT one was 2012, but is that Rio?
Yeah, that was my first year on tour. It was 2012. He finished
2012,
4th.
yeah. And he beat Parco in the final doing backhand rotations. Everyone's like, oh, wow, good for him. He didn't win it a barrel spot or something. But
yeah,
it's funny.
It just so happens when you get on tour, it's barrels or airs, and he's pretty darn good at that.
It works out. That's funny. I totally forgot about the Yaden Nickel thing. He's an accidental world champ. Almost didn't make it. But you compare that kind of trajectory, and I remember in the lead up to the season, I think this was in January or February, Nike put out this web clip or something of you. Yeah. And it was you at Salt Creek in the white wetsuit, doing huge airs. And everyone's like, holy shit, this guy is going to like destroy everybody, especially coming off the year you had on the QS.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's one of those things where it's like, compared to John's like almost accidental qualification, yours was like so hyped.
Yeah.
And I remember you made the quarters in France and people were still like, not good enough. I'm like, dude, it's fucking awesome for a rookie. But it was like, you almost had to kill the hype machine to level it out.
No, yeah, totally. Yeah. Well, that was weird because that year I actually injured myself and I was, didn't get to do Chopu. So I did requalify with that 5th in France and then a 9th in Portugal. Yeah, but which I was kind of stoked on. But then the next year I didn't even get a 9th whole on tour. Like it was like I got my ass kicked.
Why do you think that is? Like sophomore slump stuff?
Well, it was really rookie and sophomore.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
But I don't know. I just think I was I was pretty little, when I look back.
Right.
I think I was pretty little and I was super immature and kind of just expected it to happen. Yeah, I don't know. I think probably being little, I probably wasn't even good enough, really, when I look back at it. I was really good at airs.
Right.
And that was kind of my get out of jail free card, like in every QS.
Right.
And then I had that session at Salt Creek or whatever. I don't know.
I enjoyed it. I was like, this is great. How do I get a white wetsuit?
Probably one of the best sessions I've ever had. People, I don't know. It's funny you mention it because, people talk about it all the time. But, yeah, I don't know. And my turns weren't very good. I was a little kid. I was 17, 18,
How you hadn't become an adult. Like physically, I mean.
Oh, not even close. I mean, I still look at footage from me from 5 years ago and go, oh, wow, it was pretty little.
I mean, and it brings to mind like when Taj qualified and said no.
Yeah.
Because I think he was pretty young too. And I think that was part of him and Morris Cole's approach. They're like, no, you're not ready yet.
Yeah.
Did that ever cross your mind or you're like, no way, like I've been on this path to make it to the CT. I'm here. I'm taking my ticket.
No, it was definitely like, like people have done that. And I think Julian waited till he was like 21 or 22 to qualify, like probably for that specific reason. But I don't know. Yeah. Like I said, I was kind of misskewed because Gabriel and John's like a year older than me. And then Gabriel's like only a couple months older than me.
Right.
And they were just owning it. And I was like, oh, I felt like I was as good as them at the time. And good enough to, hold my own with the best. But I was just looking back and being honest, I just don't think I was.
Right.
Yeah.
And when do you think that flipped for you on tour where you were like so I'm going back to the self-awareness question of you realize like, man, I'm getting my ass kicked here. I think it's because I'm smaller. I think there's some things I have to work on.
Yep.
What year for you where you're like, cool, I've put in the work. It's starting to flip for me. I feel like I belong here.
Well, competing so weird because especially in my early stages, I felt like my life outside of the events was kind of like wonky with my wife now, who was my girlfriend at the time. I was just a lot of things like teenage angst and expectations for myself or from other people and getting angry a lot when things didn't fall in my lap. But I finished in 2000, one of those 2000s, I want to say 2014 or something. I finished 11th. But it was a weird year. It was almost like I was being like a little party grom, like kind of just like, let's have fun, like that stage,
Right.
And I was broken up with my wife at the time, even though I was still seeing her a lot. So there's just kind of a lot of weird stuff. And then the next year after that, I did terrible again with that same strategy. And I was so bad. And I think it was halfway through that year where I was like, I'm done. Like, I'm done with this. Like, I don't want to party. I want my wife now to be I'm going to marry her. Like, I'm going to ask her to marry me at the end of the year. And I was like, got back together with her. And yeah, really after I kind of ironed that stuff out. And then also I worked with a guy named Eric Podrat who like did Navy SEALs, like psychology or whatever the word is. And just talking to him about a lot of stuff. And then I actually got 5th in the Azores. I won Cascais. And then I got 2 nights at France and Portugal. and lost to Bede in France. And then I actually beat him in round 3 in Portugal. We had so many heats together. It was funny. But yeah, and then it just ironed it out. I was like, boom, done. And then when I got home from Pipe, I was like, okay, I'm going to get in the gym. Like, let's get after it. And because I just felt so insecure for whatever reason because of the life I was living outside of the jersey.
Right.
And then once everything was set with my wife, we moved in together. I proposed. I was like, hey, it's on. Like, I'm just going to like live and die by this stuff. And that was really the end of 2015. And then 2016, I trained like a motherfucker and I was like ready to go. And I ended up finishing 4th. So
you finaled right away on the Gold Coast.
Yeah. Finished 4th. And then the next year, I think I finished 7th, which was like lower, but I was stoked, still in the top 10.
It kind of goes back to the age thing to me, because this is something that we talk about a little bit, but it happens inside and outside of surfing, where we talked about the guys from the Lost at Sea thing. Like, there wasn't social media then.
Yeah.
Like, and for someone like yourself who grew up really in the spotlight, deservedly so, it's hard. Like, I mean, I always think like, man, I'm so glad that no one had a camera on me when, like, last week, let alone like 17. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, but it's, you guys don't have that. Like, you're like, well, everything's under a microscope, especially someone like yourself who's been sponsored since a very young age and has a lot of attention on you and stuff. And so it makes total sense that it's like, at some point you're like, look, I have to figure this out. Like, I have to, you know, like, guys are succeeding. They're out there partying on tour. Maybe I should try that. Yeah. That kind of works. It kind of doesn't. Okay, that didn't work. So I'm going to do that. You know, you're just kind of figuring it out as you're becoming an adult. Yeah. You know, and that's not easy.
No, totally. You're like collecting data really and just putting it on a chart of like life and seeing what works. And then competitive surfing is so wonky too, because like you could do something and it works just because the waves are coming to you and you have mojo or you have a good board, or it's just weird. You have a shitty board and you do good in the comps. Like, and I've talked about this with Mick a lot. It's like competitive surfing teaches you a lot about life because shit just gets thrown at you all the time, and you just got to learn how to fucking deal with it, really. Right. Yeah.
Well, that makes me think, just even over the course of your career, how much harder the tour's gotten from a talent standpoint. Like, we were talking about Taj before. Like, Taj was, in a way, his approach was so far ahead of its time that almost his whole time on tour, he was like easily in the top space. Even if he wasn't finishing up there, like, he could do it. Yeah. Whereas your talent's gotten better and better and better, but you've also had to be on tour at the same time as like John's ascension and the Brazilian Storm, like really taking over. And that's not easy. You know?
No, yeah, I know. It's gnarly. I mean, the tour is so hard. It's like crazy. And I think everyone trains pretty hard. And I don't think that many people like party and like, you know, they all have the feeling I have when I, you know, like live a clean life and work my ass off going into a heat. I think like 95% of the guys and girls on tour have that feeling. Right. So you just don't have that edge as much as maybe you used to. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So it's rad. I think it's rad for the sport that everyone's trying so hard and ripping.
It's interesting. I was talking to, I won't name them, but I was talking to some former pros about this pretty recently, and they were talking about the finals, but they were just talking about the finals from the sense of, you know, when you look back on your career, you don't actually give a shit about, oh, I signed like an extra $100,000 with that sponsor, or that party was great. They're like, we don't remember any of the parties. Yeah. They're like, what you do remember is like the battle in the live arena and how it felt against that person or that person. Yeah. And they were talking about that in the context of the finals. They're like, that's how you want to win a world title, because you would, and they were basically like, I would do that for free. Yeah. Just because that's, to Mick's point, like, that was my life. Yeah. You know, in a moment.
Yeah. Well, I think I have enough perspective now too to really like be aware of how I feel when I beat someone or I ride a good wave after my heat or in my heat or whatever. And it's the best feeling in the world to probably their point. It's like, that's the best feeling in the world. And to someone, a lucky man and woman at the end of the Lowers event, they're going to be winning a world title that way. And that's pretty rad.
Yeah. You mentioned your dad before, but for the listeners who have not been educated on who Dino Andino is, explain to the listeners who he is.
San Clemente's Tony Soprano.
That sounds rehearsed. That was pretty good. That's not the first time you've said that.
No, it's not. Yeah, my dad's just basically the most likable, lovable dude in the surf industry. It's pretty rare to find someone who doesn't like him. Yeah, now just surf Nazi, my friend / dad / coach / dude. Yeah.
How far apart are you guys in age? How old was he when you were born?
I think he was 25.
It's pretty young.
Yeah, young. Yeah.
Have you and him talked about if you ever had like another path in life that was not surfing? You know?
Baseball for sure.
You think he would have been?
That's what he
would
was
have been
saying.
stoked.
Oh, I don't know. He was like, "What if we were in Lemoore for the event?" He's like, "What if we lived here and like you grew up? Like, well, would you ride maybe motocross or would you play baseball? Like,
Right.
Probably."
Yeah.
Yeah.
You love baseball. What did you ever play?
No, I never played. I played t-ball when I was like 1 or something.
Did you ever do any other sports?
No.
No, this is it.
Yeah.
What position do you think you would have played in baseball?
I think I'm perfect height for a shortstop.
Oh, okay, that's good. That's good.
Yeah. I've thought about this.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure. Well, and I ask a lot of a lot of people that come through, mostly CT surfers, in their development, was there a moment where they realized I'm pretty good at this? This is going to be my career. But
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you had a moment, or if that was always just sort of you're like, this was my lived experience. Like I was always this.
I had a moment when I was actually on tour and like revving up to like really go after a world title or an event win and all that stuff. And I was kind of like, because I was like, okay, I can just like hum and hoe through this. I'll probably stay on tour and like have some good days, some bad days. And I might finish in the top 10 or maybe I'll have a top 5 year without whatever, trying.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, but like if I really want to go into these events with that like bulletproof feeling, then I have to like really work on some things and train hard and like do all the shit that really sucks. Like I don't care what anyone tells you, like as much as like training is like good and whatever, like dude, it sucks so much. Like I just want to surf. Like I just want to go surf and chase swells and try to get barreled and whatever.
Right.
But like to actually even sacrifice surfing and miss swells and miss good days to be in the gym, like that was the ultimate callousing the brain for me.
Right.
Going into the event. So yeah, I had to make that decision, and I still have to make it because I like setting up my whole off season. I'm like, oh, like it'd be nice to go to Peru and try to get barreled for a month, and that would be good for the tour, right?
Yeah. Which event? We're going to G-Land. That fits.
Yeah, like pig dogs. Yeah. So yeah, but I have to check myself a lot on that for sure because I'm just a surf nerd. I want to surf it all day.
There's that exchange between, I don't know if you watch comic book movies, but in Dark Knight Rises, I think, Batman versus Bane. Seen it?
No.
All right. So Bane beats the fuck out of Batman, smashes him, and they've got this exchange going on. And Bane says to Batman that victory has defeated you. The point being, you've won so much that you're so comfortable that you're not hungry anymore, and that's why I'm going to win.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I flashed on that when you were talking about, I've already won at life.
Yeah.
But there must be balance for you, right? Because you have to appreciate everything you've done already, but then there still has to be this mongrel hunger to be like, I want to achieve.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think, it's pretty rare, like people in my position or even like a Griffith's position, like where they're like talented and good enough and in the position in their peak age of mental and physical to like actually go for the world title. So it's a huge opportunity for me. And I think, hopefully maybe the Brazilian Storm will be feeling what Batman was feeling a little bit next year.
I don't know, man. They're pretty hungry.
Yeah.
But it's actually, I'm glad you brought that up too, because how do I put this? If you were to say that in your surfing heart of hearts, there's one wave that you grew up at and that you own, right? You could say John's is Pipe. You could say Jack Robinson's is North Point.
The box.
The box, for sure, right?
Yeah.
But like for you, it would be the T Street Lowers, right?
Yeah, but it's so not an advantage. Yeah. Is that what you're getting at?
I'm I'm getting at, is it an advantage, number one? But then number two, is it also a disadvantage? Because while they are fantastic competitive waves, as far as Southern California is concerned, you still end up having to go somewhere like the box or having to go somewhere like Pipe and do work.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to get your opinion on, is this the best place to be a professional surfer? or to come from? Or is it a good
from
enough?
here?
Is it a good enough place?
I
San
think
Clemente.
it's definitely good enough. I think it's anywhere is good enough. Kelly's from Cocoa Beach.
Well, I'm going to get to that in a second. Well, actually, no, I'll get to it now. Because he, for sure, using that same sort of paradigm would be, in his surfing heart of hearts, it's Cocoa Beach. But he is clearly, like, owned other waves at different points in his career, right? Like
100%.
Lowers, Pipe, Kira, J-Bay. Do you feel like you've ever owned another spot outside of...
No, definitely not. I mean...
Do you think you could?
I haven't even...
And by owned, I don't mean like
competitively, like
invade, colonist owned. I just mean like from a performance standpoint.
I don't even know. Yeah, I don't really think of myself as an owner of waves.
No. Yeah, I guess what I'm getting at is more like at some point, arguably at still some points, like Kelly put in performances free surfing and competitively at spots like Burley Heads, Pipe, Lowers, where he was the best.
Yeah, Chopu,
perfect,
yeah,
right?
Chopu, yeah, definitely Chopu.
And I think that's kind of like every sort of contender ends up having to approach things similarly, where they're like, at some point, I've got to be the best person out here.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm curious to get your take on that.
Yeah, I mean, Lowers is such a like rippable and like user-friendly wave. I don't think there's like any advantage of growing up here. You literally just paddle out and like go right or left. Like, other world-class waves on the tour take a lot of like learning the wave. Like if you grow up at J-Bay, you have a big advantage. You know the pace, you know what waves to pick, blah, blah, blah. Like I go to J-Bay and I'm like I got to go to J-Bay like 12 days early to figure out like what waves to pick. And going into my heat, I'm still like, is this the one?
Yeah. Looks pretty good.
Yeah, it looks really good, but I might do 4 floaters and get a 5 at the end. And the next one might be like slow pace and perfect. So it's a mind fuck really. But yeah, I don't know. I don't really think it was a big advantage. I think it's really good at a young age to grow up here. And like there's, like I said, San Clemente is so rich in surfing, and it's so everything's like around the surfing and the pros, and it's just like it's perfect for it. But I think once you get to a certain point, you gotta like go and spend a lot of time at these spots to learn them really, like kind of like how Griffin has it, piping back to where he probably feels comfortable there.
Right. I remember hearing this from Stephen Bell a long time ago about Kelly, and he was like, Kelly's good because they have a home.
Yeah.
He doesn't have one, and he's like, I think we were talking about it in response to like a Jeffreys Bay thing, and the event finished in like the first half of the window, but there were waves coming, and Kelly was like, I'm staying for a month.
Yeah.
And Belly's like, that's why he's so good, because he just would do that. Yeah. Like he didn't have anywhere to go. Like he would just stay and make those waves his own in a lot of ways.
Yeah, for sure. I think that analogy is great, but I feel I'm a lot different. I love quality of life, and I want to have like, my wife and I want to have 5 kids and like pump them out. Like I have a lot of different things going on. Myself, selfishly, I would love to spend 2 months at J-Bay, Same.
Yeah. It's a good point. It's actually a good thing to bring up too, because you do strike me as the kind of guy that is really excited about starting a family.
Yeah. Hugely.
And do you think you're going to be the kind of person that wants to travel with them, or you think you're going to go and do your job and come home?
I think it just depends on the venue.
Yeah.
I would love to. My wife's a trooper too. I would love to just have an army around the world getting barreled, and dad's competing and winning heats and stuff, but logistically at like Chopu, that's definitely not going to happen. So it just depends. I think, juggling life and having a family, and then also scoring waves and staying for swells and all that stuff, that'll just happen there. But I'm definitely the kind of person who puts family first and puts a lot of priority into my family for sure.
You're also just observedly someone has, fortunately for you, spent a ton of time at a lot of these spots.
Yeah.
Like comparatively. And that's a function of basically your dad setting you up to do it. Like you traveled the tour when you were a kid.
Yeah.
And when I brought up the, Jack Robinson, the boxer, John at Pipe thing, it's one of those things where they say if you ever want to be fluent in a language, like another language, you actually have to learn it when you're really young, like when your brain's forming.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you can start at like 20 and study for 20 years and you'll get good, but never like truly fluent.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things where it's, you traveling around and experiencing these waves and just getting like a rhythm in the ocean at such a young age probably gives you such a huge advantage in that respect.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I really don't feel like I've ever had that before. I've spent so much time at Pipe and Backdoor, and I don't feel like even close to one of the best guys out there. And I don't really, every year I go, I'm like, you know, I got to like relearn this, you know?
Right, yeah.
So it's just, I don't know. I guess maybe I'm just looking at it as a lot more of an insecure glasses or whatever, you know, point of view. But yeah, I don't know. It's just weird. It's weird. I don't know.
But here's a good question that you brought up. But do you feel more comfortable out at Chopu than Pipe? You've had great results there. That's why I bring it up.
Yeah, maybe competitively, you know, but it's weird. I've always found a way to get like pretty decent waves at Pipe and Backdoor. Like obviously I'm not going to be the guy at any session because there's so many good locals there. Yeah. But I've found my way around the lineup and had decent backdoor waves and then I'll just compete out there and I'll just be so lost. It's crazy. And I'll feel like, I've said this a bunch, but I'll feel like I have, like if I was to paddle out there for 40 minutes in a free surf, I feel like I'd get better waves than I did in my heat. Right. Yeah. I'm always fighting for 2s and 3s and 4s, and someone gets a 5 and wins the heat at the end of the heat. I'm just like, what just happened at, you know, Pipeline, the best wave in the world, where you're supposed to, you can get a life-changing wave in your heat, and I'm looking for a 3. Like it's really weird. I just had trippy luck out there. So
well, the reason I asked about the difference is because just because as you pointed out, like, you know, 50, 100 guys out at Pipe Backdoor on a really good day, and because you're someone who's grown up in the industry, I wonder if it's harder for you to kind of have to navigate that pack where they're like, oh, I know exactly who that guy is because I've been watching him for 20 years. I'm not letting him get away. Compared to Chopes, where the pack's radical. Like the locals out at Chopes are unbelievable, but it's maybe just less of a thing than.
Well, it's just not even a thought in Tahiti because the wave's so perfect. It's like, you just go there and you get deep in the barrel and you come out. Like there's so many different variables surfing Pipe and Backdoor. Yeah. So yeah, I definitely feel a lot more comfortable in Tahiti.
Bringing it back to San Clemente, you've obviously grown up here your whole life. It has changed a ton, I'd just say even in the last 10 years in terms of the surfing community. You know, it's always had like a core surfing heritage, but you know, the advent of e-bikes and like, you know,
the San Clemente of vehicle.
Everywhere becoming like the Autobahn on the streets. And, but just the phenomenon of in America now, like there's parents who are like, my kid's good at surfing, we're moving to San Clemente and getting a Sprinter van. Like that's the joke. Right? I'm curious to learn what you think about that. Not from both I'm a local who lives here and now there's like, we're being overrun by e-bikes and Sprinter vans, but also from like when I was growing up, like it wasn't really a thought. There'd always be like a few people that were like potentially world-class surfers, whether they were at, you know, Manhattan Beach or Steamer Lane or in Ventura or San Diego, and they would stay there. Yeah. As opposed to now where it's like everyone's pulled out of school and heading to San Clemente.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's a trip. Yeah, growing up, it seemed like, or it feels like now that like winters are like almost non-existent, you know, because we used to have winters where it was like, you know, the crowds would go away and you'd get to like surf your local beach break with like not as many people, and now the summers just feel long where it's just always kind of crowded and whatever. But on the flip side, it's like if people are surfing and kids are trying to rip, it's like it's good for you and I. It's beautiful for the industry, you know, to thrive. And yeah, it's been weird even for me because, you know, 6 or 7 years ago I was like super psyched on this like pack of Groms, you know, 10 pack of Groms that are just ripping, and I was like, oh, that's cool, you know, they're ripping. But now they're like GMO Groms, and they're like a foot taller than me, and they're like frothing every surf to get a 9th in the US Open or 5th or whatever, you know. And I come home, I'm just like, oh yeah, you know, I was just on the road and I've been training a lot, and I just want to go have a nice relaxing surf. And Cade Matson and Crosby Colapinto are just out there just waxing me, and I'm like, my competitive juices start. It's just it's a weird feeling for me because you can't have relaxing surfs around here, which could be good, you know, really, because the level's so high. But, you know, it's just the way it is, kind of.
You're a little bit like
a lot of pro surfers that are ripping.
And you're a little bit like Dr. Frankenstein, where you've created all these little monsters.
Yeah, and I'm like, what have I done?
I shouldn't have given Crosby that wave 8 years ago, because now it's come back to bite me in the ass. Did they give you respect on the lineup at least?
Yeah, they do. They're great kids, and I have created a monster because they're all like now my best friends, and they're like grown men. And like I gave Crosby a board for the Outer Banks event. I gave him his best groveler. So yeah, it's great. It's great to help out, and it's awesome. But it's just competitive around here, and intense.
And I mean, you mentioned like there's not only homegrown professional surfers, but other surfers that are moving to town. Felipe has lived around town for a while.
Yeah. Jordy, Keanu Singh.
Yep.
Caroline Marks.
If since Felipe is in the finals, will anyone from San Clemente be backing Felipe in the finals? Is anyone adopting him?
Maybe Yufu.
Trade prospect. Yeah. That's right.
I don't know. I mean, what's weird is that Connor's from California, and he spent a lot of time down here.
Yeah.
I think he'll get a big support crew for sure, and I'm sure a lot of people from Santa Barbara will come down and cheer him on. But Morgan's actually fit right in the community. I was just on the phone call with him before we started this, and he's kind of a little legend. Like, he just hangs with the boys. Like, he was living at Griffin's parents' house for like a month. Like, so I think he would have a decent amount of people that were rooting for him too. So yeah, Felipe, I don't know. He doesn't surf that much. Just I think he kind of hides out and surfs in trippy spots and weird times of day. Like, I call Griffin and I'm like, hey, let's go surf. And I'm like, he's like, okay. Like, he calls his brother calls Cade, Cade's with Jet's with Cole, I'm with Crane. And it's just like, boof, all at once. And I guarantee Felipe's just going, oh, I'm not going there. Yeah, so we don't see him much, as much as we love him and respect him and his surfing a lot. We just don't see him that much, so.
Interesting. Yeah. We got a couple more topics, and we got our listener questions, but we're going to take one more quick break to get a word in from our sponsors. We'll be right back. I feel like Madison unquestionably made the best possible case for you for the 2022 Championship Tour Wildcard.
Yeah.
In the event that everything goes well on that front, next year's tour has Pipeline, Sunset, Super Tubos, Bells Beach, Margaret River, The Cut, Garajagan, Lowers, Sakurama, J-Bay, Chopu. Which event or events are you most looking forward to going back to?
I would just say Pipeline. I think, it's a special wave, and I think it's probably the most prestigious event to win on the whole tour. So, and it's the first one. So I'll say Pipeline. I'm excited.
I like it. And we have the remaining Challenger Series events this year. We've got Huntington Beach, Ericeira, Hossegor, and Haleiwa. Are you going to take a crack at any of those just to keep the tools sharp, or what are you thinking?
Yeah, I was definitely debating like doing all of them except for Haleiwa, because the birth of my first child is December 11th, which I think is like around that, full term. I'm learning all the vocabulary of pregnancy, but full term is like 36 weeks, and it's right around there. So I'm not going anywhere. But
so when you just pretend, you're like, yeah, and you're like, what is it? You're Googling.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, it'd be great to go do the events in Europe. But I think hopefully I'll get the wild card, and I'll be training, trying to get strong for those events. But yeah, I'm definitely doing the US Open. It's right up the street, and yeah, it's a ball competing. So I'm excited for that.
And you're going to have a baby girl, right?
Yes, girl.
You excited?
Yeah. You didn't see the reveal?
I did.
It was
You want to talk about it?
I mean, just my life was flashing before my eyes in front of 40 of my best friends.
With cameras, like we talked about.
Yeah, like a million cameras. Yeah. So yeah, I never pictured having a boy. Like or having a girl. Everything I pictured about kids was just like a squad of just like young men, just like,
that's what you knew.
Wrestling on the carpet.
Like, yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah, like
hunting.
Have at it, boys.
Yeah,
eating, turkey off the bone. and then it got kind of like, it got weirdly competitive because like everyone was like, you're having a girl, like, and I'm like, well, wait, what? Like, okay, like that's kind of cool. I'll still love her. Like, what do you mean? Like, they're like picking on me like by using that. So then I was like trying to be strong and like, I'm gonna have a boy. Like, I'm gonna show those people. And then, and they were all there. And then, I was just like, it was like in slow motion, the balloon popped and it was like all the pink confetti. And I was like literally looking for one blue one in there out of the tens of thousands pieces of confetti. I was like, there's got to be a blue one. And I was like, there's not, no. And then it took me like 2 or 3 days to rewrite everything, okay, girl, this, okay, she's gonna want to wear dresses and not just board shorts or but then I was like, man, women these days, they do all the same shit, so this is rad. I'm on board.
Well, and like I think that's a good point. Boys can do whatever women want to do too. Like that's kind of and as a father, I've got twins. I got a boy and a girl. Yeah.
Done. Clean sweep. I've
repopulated the planet. But women are amazing. My daughter is amazing. My son's amazing, but man, you're gonna be stoked. Yeah. And it will change your life, unquestionably. I know you know that. And I know that it's one of those things too where it's like, I can appreciate the build-up, the communal build-up of it's red team, blue team, red team, blue team. And you're and it's less about I'm being a father, this is going to be great. And more I have to beat that team. It's
it got competitive. It's the best way I could say it.
And so she's due in December.
December 11th, which would be a sick date because it would be 1-2-1-1-2-1. So there'd be what's a race car. It's backwards, it's the same. So
palindrome. I'm into it.
Yeah. You're smart.
Don't put too much pressure on the date, man. If she comes before or after, she's gonna be amazing.
No, I know, but it's a sick date. I was like, wow, this is rad. But palindrome. I know I'll wax you if you want to.
Yeah, I need it. Well, you use Foo Wax, I can't do it.
So I use green.
Yeah.
You're wearing a short arm.
I was telling somebody we had Jamie O'Brien on the podcast. I used to work at the Rip Curl Surf Center. And I opened the podcast with, you know what? We have to clear the air because I used to work at the surf shop and used to get the Boost Wildcards in the Trestles. Yeah. And I was restocking the wax shelf one day. And I remember you came in and tapped me on the shoulders like, hey, brah, what wax do I need for lowers? And I'm like, oh, because you rode for Rip Curl. And I'm like, you need the green. He's like, how about the purple? And I'm like, no, there's no purple right now, man. It's
too warm.
It's gonna melt. And then you looked at me and you said, give me a bag of purple. And I went, fuck you, motherfucker. And I said, when you got knocked in round 2, I was like, that's right.
You slipped a little. I saw it.
I was like, you should listen to
the wax was soggy.
Minimum wage retail employee. Let's talk about equipment.
Sure.
Will you ever leave Mayhem surfboards for another shaper?
Probably not. That's just honest truth.
I want to hear it. Yeah. How long have you ridden for Mayhem?
Well, my first ever board, I think I was maybe on my 6th birthday. It was an orange Noah Boudreau. No, it was a green. It was a green Noah Boudreau. The second one was orange. Then I got some Timmies. And then I think since I was 7, 8, all Mayhem. So 20 years, 21 years.
And lots of surfers. I think maybe the most famous one was Mick Fanning. Will have kind of lifelong relationships with their shapers, but they'll step out to experiment. And Mick famously stepped out and rode your boards, your Mayhems here at Lowers. Yeah. Have you ever tested other equipment, I'd say in recent years? And if so, what's the reason behind testing out other shapers?
Well, for me, last 2019, I rode a DH at J-Bay. The first rounds would have been the first 3 rounds, and I rode my mat in the quarters and semis. And the DH was epic. Mick hooked that up, and I got 2 sent over with Renato, and that was just opened my eyes to a whole different thing, really, and it was great. I probably had about 10 total in that time period after J-Bay. So it was great to ride them. I didn't ride them in any other events, but they got me to the quarters in J-Bay, which before that I never made it past round 3.
Right.
So that was rad. And then once the year was canceled, 2020, I literally ordered any boards I could possibly ride because I was like, okay, I can't go anywhere.
Right. If you get to experiment, now's the time.
Lowers every day, which is like a hamster wheel of itself.
Right. Yeah.
So I rode Timmy's, Stamps, Xanadu's, Sharp Eyes, I'm sure I'm missing a couple.
What was the purpose? Just to switch things up,
Oh,
or
Merrick's,
to
Chili's,
to feel something different, to bring something back to Matt? What was the thinking at the time?
It never was the Matt thing because I just didn't want to like. Well, I brought Matt the DHCs because they have that kind of relationship with Mick, and I think Matt was bummed that I rode the boards, but he didn't express that to me. But he did take it into consideration and checked him out, and I think Darren would have been fine with that, or he was actually. He was telling me to do it. So, but when I ordered all the other boards in 2020 and surfed them at Lowers and around at beach breaks at home, I wasn't never gonna do that because it didn't feel right in my soul. So I just rode them and checked them out, and yeah, that's all I did really. I did ride Cabiancas, and there was like a 5'9" little groveler, and I ordered some kind of like that, and I actually did bring the Cabianca to Matt because they have a relationship also. But the other shapers that don't have relationships with Matt, I didn't do it because I just either the boards were a lot worse than Matt's in my experience,
Right.
or I just didn't want to like start something that didn't need to happen.
How involved are you in the board building? I noticed we're in your garage. You got a bunch of foam here. Do you get in the bay with Matt and really like wrench on the boards?
No, I have this issue, and I think a lot of people have this when they're learning things. They're really insecure and actually scared of it, like the first steps. And insecure, scared, embarrassed is 3 terrible words, but just being honest. So I actually I was just hacking myself and in the garage with no shaper light, just like going for it. And I made one board, it was a 6'3", and I actually surfed on it kind of like weirdly good, whether it was a state of mind thing or whatever. I was like, this thing
you built it. You're like, this works. It's amazing.
Good. Like, well, I did everything I'd normally do. Just catching a lot of rails. But yeah, and then I was injured, and I was like, okay, I want to shape a boogie board. It's like, whatever, there's a boogie board over there. And I just wanted to learn to shape because I just wanted to surround myself with surfing and learning to shape. And the ultimate goal for me was, and I better get to it now, was to be able to shape for my kids. Because I didn't want to keep bugging shapers for my kids' boards once I was retired. So I got, 6 years before she's riding a shortboard if she likes surfing. So
great.
Yeah, I got to learn quick. But yeah, I just wanted to learn about it. And I do like just knowing about surfing and riding waves and experiencing different things and using tools and getting dirty. All that stuff sounds like a lot of fun for me. So yeah, I did. I am building a little shaping bay, in that little zone right there. So I will, keep hacking away.
You, more so than a lot of your peers on the CT, actually seem pretty comfortable experimenting with like Ferrari models. You know, like you develop, or the marketing told me, you co-developed the Swordfish with Nat.
I actually did.
Yeah. And it seems like you're really comfortable riding different kinds of models. Is that true?
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun for me. My relationship with surfing is so not jockey at all, even though I might be portrayed that way. I really do love making films and learning about shaping, learning how to shape, riding, I call them hipster boards, but I can only say it because I call myself a hipster at heart. So yeah, I just love it all, and I think in the past it was like with current and stuff, like it was just like way more acceptable. And now it's very like jockey with your hat and your abs on Instagram, and you only ride your boards that throw spray, like all that stupid stuff.
Yeah.
And then you learn full rotations and the trampling and all that stuff, which is all great. And I do all that same stuff, but it's just not my relationship with surfing at all.
I wonder if that's where I wouldn't say like generally headed for everybody, because you have to be fairly privileged to have all that, right, to begin with. But like kind of going back to what you were saying, for you, it sounds like it's not just, I'm going to go to the high performance center, I'm going to practice all my airs at Waco or wherever.
Yeah.
I'm going to only ride like my Ferrari board in all conditions because I don't want to lose like a sharpness to it.
Yeah.
But for you, because I bring this up because I know there are a few winners, and I think you probably still do it, where you like load the truck up and go up to Ocean Beach and ride big boards, and like you you said you're a surf nerd, but you genuinely seem like you love going on surf trips and doing all that kind of stuff. Where that's not necessarily everyone's future, especially if you're hyper focused on competing and that's it, and just being as sharp as possible and putting your abs on Instagram, as you put it.
Yeah, well, I just think that, it's just the relationship that people have with surfing. I think a lot of people, and maybe this is my downfall, but a lot of people have an income based relationship with surfing. You know, what is it going to give me? Whereas I feel like I try to give back to the sport, and I just went on a 10-day trip with my dad where I peeled the stickers off my board and surfed perfect waves and no one was around. So, and that's like the most fun I could actually have, really.
Right.
And, you know, you mentioned like I go up north a lot. Like I spent 3 weeks in Santa Cruz last year. You know, I filmed, but I haven't released one clip. Like I just like to watch the footage. So I don't know. It's weird. I think, I'm just a surf turkey. It's kind of a gross term, but I truly am. So.
Why is that gross?
I don't know. I just think of an uncooked turkey. You know, they're kind of like bumpy and gross.
Yeah,
and then like
gross.
him on a wave, and then that's not me.
I've heard it before. I think Pat uses it a lot. He's like, that guy's just a total surf turkey, or that guy like, and I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Good term. But I'm with you. Uncooked turkeys are kind of gross.
Yeah, exactly. I already pull the stuff out.
All right. So this has been fantastic. We did put questions out to the Instagram community and how to whittle them down to 3.
Oh, wow.
So 3 questions.
I'm sure people were just lining up to talk to me.
You'd be surprised.
There's no way.
People have a lot of questions, man. I feel like we answered a bunch of them. First question is from @Meeg_Christine, who asks, what ways do you feel you can use your pro surfer status to help others?
What ways do I feel?
You probably do it in a lot of ways. We talked a little bit about it.
For me, I'm not big on social media, and it's like social media is so like there's always a purpose behind it, like to beat your own drum or to have people like you because you did this for that guy, and it's just like, or to, you know, this thing that came into my brain is so smart that I need to tell everyone, like, you know what I mean? Which is super weird and gross for me. But for me, it's always been lead by example. And I think, that's kind of the best thing I could do. It's kind of like everything will be in my control and I'll lead by example. And if you have a live experience with me, hopefully it's enjoyable at some kind of,
This has kind of been enjoyable.
Yeah.
No.
Semi. Yeah.
But it's a good point. Like, I mean, and it's hard, right? And we've talked a little bit about this where it does seem artificial, like social media in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Mostly is, right?
Yeah.
But it is difficult, right? Because it is a platform where you can promote yourself and yourself as a role model, right?
Yeah.
But as you said, it's like you'd rather your acts do it. You'd rather show, not tell, and be like, I'm not here to talk about it. I'm just going to do it.
Well, people present themselves as role models so that other people, as a role model, so that other people like them.
Kind of, right?
Which is like not a very good role model to do things so that people like you.
Sure.
So I mean,
No, I understand.
I'm overthinking everything, as you could tell, but that's just my take on it. I don't know.
I get it. I get it.
Yeah, and then like the whole movie thing has been great because it's like I made it and funded it, but it's all about my friends, and it's like when you watch it, you'll be like, oh, it's not a Kolohe thing. It's like actually the a crew thing that's kind of cool in its own, you know, local San Clemente way. So I've been pumping that out, honestly.
Of course, but I mean, it's interesting, and it actually. I think you mentioned Dane Reynolds earlier, but that's kind of their program too with Chapter 11 at the moment. They're like, it's now a platform for the other kids in Ventura, and you're doing something similar with this film for the other kids in San Clemente.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a very expensive tryout for Mayhem, though. Like,
surf movies are kind of, you know, they're coming back. It's cool.
Yeah.
Chapter 11, I think sponsors are getting projects done. Like, so I think Billabong has a big project. Like, it's cool. It's going to be rad. I think there's definitely a place for surf movies, and they need to be there.
Oh, totally. Like I always felt like it's funny because I think after the probably late 90s, early aughties, it kind of split where very high level talent got pushed into like you're a competitive surfer or you're a film guy.
Yeah.
And like, well, I'm like, I just like watching like Billabong Trilogy. Then I like watching Andy like belt Kelly in Japan, you know, like it's all the same. Like to me, I was just like, it's all one thing. But
yeah,
I think you're right where it's like, the level on tour is so high right now that like, and everyone's surfing all the time. Why wouldn't you be putting non-competitive product out as well? Like, it just makes sense.
Yeah, it's great. It's great.
Second question. Jerry1994 asks, what is the most important heat win and loss in your career?
Well, I definitely know the loss. Heat wins, I don't know.
Start with the loss. Let's go.
I never like put my stuff on like my like heat wins and a pedestal. That's a weird question. Loss was definitely, I lost to Kelly at J-Bay. It would have been 2015. And it was just like one of those heats. I did everything to lose and I still almost won at the end and I had a good score. And then I was just like, I just exploded and I destroyed my board in the water, destroyed it on land, screamed at my dad, and then I locked myself in my room for 3 days. And my dad was actually worried, like proper.
I'd be worried.
Yeah. And then I came home and I was just done. I was done. That was the moment I was done. I was like, okay, I'm getting back together with my wife. Let's do this. You know, it's on. I'm all in on this stuff. And that was the most important loss of my life, but it didn't happen until after the next event. Because the next event, I had Mick Fanning at lowers, and I flipped the judges off for the remainder of the last 15 minutes of the heat because of the opening exchange scores that came through. So the Kelly was the turning point, but what happened that was most important from that wasn't after till the next event. So it was kind of just that zone for me where I really like turned my just life right side up.
What'd you do for 3 days in your room?
I was just depressed. I was just like, this isn't going to work. Like, I was like, it's never going to work. Like, I don't know what to do, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
People have those rock bottom moments, you know?
Yeah, I was
like
definitely.
You got to hit to bounce.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I was still hanging out with my wife a little bit, but not enough to where I came home and she was like, yeah, I'm on board right away. So I had to kind of like get on my hands and knees a little bit with her. And I think, it was lowers when I did the judges thing. And then after that, I went to Europe, and that's when I got 5th in the Azores, won cash, and then got 2 nights in France and Portugal. And I was like, okay, I'm on. Let's do this little momentum here. You know, I won a big event at Cascais, and then I finished 4th in the world next year. So it was good.
Yeah, that's a good bounce.
Yeah. Most important heat win?
Yeah, you got one?
No, I don't know. Yeah.
Probably the first one after lowers would be
yeah.
on the trajectory.
For me, a special one was beating Gabriel in the quarters. It's all like low level of achievements, you know, because I never won a CT, but beating Gabriel at Saquarema was a super rad feeling in the quarters. Yeah. And then I kind of like solidified in my mind, like, okay, I could beat Gabriel. I've beaten everyone. Like, let's just do it in one day.
Well, that goes back to what we were saying, where you're not going to remember the contract. You're not going to remember whatever, the party, but like the moment and the stakes of the moment and being like, it doesn't matter if it's the quarters or not. It fucking meant a lot to you. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so that's kind of the thing where you're like, that's what you never forget it. Yeah. Because you're like, I did that in the live arena. Yeah. And no one can take that away from me.
Yeah. And it was exactly, that's a good point, because people could have a round 2 win that would really switch their life around or whatever. But that was super just cool, because obviously everyone wanted Gabriel to win on the beach, and there was like a lot of pressure, a lot of hundreds of people watching and rooting for Gabriel, and I won in the last wave, like in the last 3 minutes, and it was just a really rad feeling.
I love it.
Yeah.
Last question from the Instagram community is from @Thomas.Hurst, who asks, who is your biggest rival amongst John, Connor, Griffin, and Kanoa?
John, Connor, Griffin, Kanoa. I don't know. The rival thing's weird. Well, I'll tell you who I've never beaten is Michelle Perez or Miguel Pupo, but they're not on that list.
You add them in there.
I think I have probably an 11-1 record against those two.
Yeah, right. Why do you think that is? There's just some guys where you're like, just.
I don't know why. I always get Michelle in like his like really good conditions.
Right, yeah.
Like pipe or bells or something. And he'll just tell me.
You got your Rio though, right?
They get me in Rio, yeah. I split the opening.
I would have lost money on you if I was a betting person.
I split the opening exchange with him, and I tried to air. And if I would have made the air, it would have been a lot different.
He was doing like backhand rotations too, and everyone was like, "Whoa, okay."
Yeah. Yeah, he can definitely launch. So yeah. Griffin, John, Kanoa, Connor. Biggest rival. I mean, for me, I think all those guys on the list would definitely say it's the most important guy is John, and the guy who would be the raddest to beat would be John. So I'll just say him, I guess.
You got him in Japan.
Got him in Japan, yeah, but
you look like you weren't going to lose that heat from before it started through the end. I'm like, I don't think he's losing this heat. You look like I was like, I'm not losing.
That was a weird thing, but then I lost to Kanoa the next round, so yeah, I don't know. That was a trippy thing because we're staying together, we're boys.
Yeah,
like it's been the most epic trip ever, and I was like doing the math when he made his heat. I was like, I think I'm gonna have John, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna have John, and we're like. Literally staying together. We're friends from the same country.
Yeah.
And I was like, I had to flip the script mentally. I was like, at first I was like, why would the Olympic Committee or ISA, whoever's running the event, like, why would they do that? Like, how is that possible? It doesn't make any sense. There's about an hour of like whining about it. And then I was like, wait a second. So if I lose to John, no one's going to care. So I got some free play to go on with me, right here. Like, let's do this. Like, so I just, try to have fun and enjoy it.
I liked it. All right. We're now here for the final segment, which is the lightning round presented by Michelob Ultra Pure Gold. There are 10 questions for you to answer as quickly as you can. First question. If you could only have one board setup for the rest of your life, single fin, twin fin, thruster, quad bonzer, or finless, what would you choose?
Definitely a thruster. That's easy.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee, but Red Bull?
You get your paper, buddy. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Burrito or pizza?
Pizza for sure.
Interesting. Last book you read?
The Catcher in the Rye 20 years ago.
Whoa, good memory. If it's 20 years ago. JD Salinger.
Not very smart, but I
made an impact, clearly.
Remember the book. The cover was orange. That's why I remember.
There you go. There you go. Best surf film ever.
Whoa. Reckless Isolation.
Shameless.
No. Blue Horizon for sure. Blue Horizon.
That's a good one. That's a good one. One wave you never have to go back to.
There was this wave that was the backup event that we had to surf in round one in 2016. It was something Marie in Rio. Gru Marie.
Oh.
It was because we had to go because of a sewage spill.
Yep.
And it was so hard to surf, and I'll never go back there.
I remember. If you only get to surf one wave the rest of your life.
I'm trying to think of like a really like consistent wave. I keep going back to lowers, but it's so not what I want to say. But
you can dreamcast it. You can be like, no one's there. It breaks every day. Whatever you like. Yeah.
I'll go with lowers. Man, that sucks.
Inescapable.
That sucks.
It's in your heart of hearts. That's where it is, man.
It's part of my DNA, unfortunately.
It is. Well, fortunately, unfortunately. It's not a U-boat on Normandy Beach, man. That's a good thing. Best person to share a lineup with?
Wow, that's a hard one too. I'll just go with my dad.
Worst person to share the lineup with?
Worst person to share a lineup with. Who's a person I always feel like I have to give a wave to? Maybe my dad. Yeah, I'll go with my dad.
He's owed.
Yeah, it's like he's like I can't dog my dad. He's done everything for me. So you just go, Pops.
Last one. Finish this sentence. I will next achieve a state of happiness by
the birth of my child.
There you go.
I
It's a
can't
little
wait.
ways away, but I love it. Good
I can't
answer.
wait. Yeah.
Good answer. Kolohe Andino, thank you for coming on the lineup. Everyone check out Reckless Isolation.
Thank you.
Tune into the Rip Curl WSL Finals here in Kolohe's backyard at Lower Trestles. And we'll look forward to hopefully having him back in 2022 on the championship tour at Pipe. Looking forward to watching you shred in between, buddy. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's been great.